we studied about the decision to move from one place to another based on the human capital investment theory. Okay? So basic idea is that the individual will compare the present net benefit of moving and the present net benefit of staying, and if the present benefit of moving exceeds the present value of the benefit of staying, then the person will move, otherwise the person will stay. Okay? So we in the last class we discussed these factors that affect the migration decisions, like earnings opportunities. So the movement usually happen from low income to high income area, from developing countries to developed countries. So in age, generally the movers are younger. Moving distance, people tend to move around more likely the short distance than the large distance, because it's cheaper to move in short distance. And marital status, family size, like a single are more likely to move than the married, and small family size. Generally, people with smaller family size are more likely to move than people with larger family size. Everything else equal because their cost is lower. And spouse's income and work. So if the spouse generally is working or having income, then less likely to move. Okay, so we discussed so far about the individual level decision, but now let's extend a little bit the decision of migration to family situations, family migration. So for people who are married, for example, and they tend to move together. Okay? So using that kind of observation, we can think of family migration decisions must be a little different from the single person's migration decisions. Okay? So in this case, family migration is like a personal migration, but in this case, the family will look at the net gain as the family, not net gain as a single individual. Okay? So that's basically the key. So think of a couple, married couple, husband and wife, will move if the net gain as a whole is positive. Okay, for example. So you can think of this way. So what is this? This is the husband's size of thinking. So this is present value of benefits of a husband of moving, okay, minus present value of benefits of a husband of staying. Okay? So this is a net benefit of moving, okay, for husband. So if the husband is a single person, the husband will look at only this one, whether this is positive or negative. For this wife, we have another one. Okay, so if the wife is a single person, the wife will look at only this one, whether to move or not. But as a family, so the theoretical idea is that they will look at the sum of the net benefits, not just one person. Okay? Get it? So the idea here is they will look at the sum. So there is a case where that the husband may gain and wife may lose actually, but as sum they may decide to move or decide to stay. Okay, let's just look at this diagram. Okay, so let's think of this. We have this simple diagram that has four areas. Should we call it quadrant? But this part, so this vertical axis shows a private net gain to husband. Okay? So this is the part of PVVHM minus PVVHS. So that's the private net gain for husband. So this is the positive area for husband. And this is a negative area. Okay? So for the husband, if the husband look at only the private gain, the husband will move if the husband finds he is located in this area, and stay if he finds that he's located in this area. For wife, we have a horizontal axis. This is positive side. This is negative side. Okay. So we have these 4 quadrants. So obviously, this 4 quadrants shows that this area, both people have private net gains, right? So both husband and wife has private net gains. In this case, husband has positive net gain, but wife has negative, okay, gain. In this case, the opposite, wife has a negative gain, positive gain, but husband has actually negative, it's a loss. Okay? Here, both lose. And we can draw a line that shows the GH plus GW equals 0. Okay? So this is the line that shows that there is no gain or loss from moving for the family. It's basically indifferent. Okay? So as you can see that now if you draw this line, and what it shows is that this area, okay, must be this sum of gains must be positive in this area. Sum of gains are negative in this area. Okay? So the family looks at this line and whether the family as a whole is located here or here. Okay? Get it? That makes sense? Okay? So that's the idea. So in this case, for example, if both have private net gains, obviously they will move. Okay? Nobody will object. But if they are in this area, okay, husband has a gain. So husband wants to move. But in this area, actually, wife doesn't want to move. So privately, wife may have a loss of jobs or loss of earnings, okay, or too much cost. But as a family, the husband gain is enough to compensate for wife's loss in this area. Okay, so at the end, they will both move. Okay, but wife doesn't want to move, but moves because, in a way, that she is tied to the family. So we call her tied mover. Okay? So she moves not because she wants to, but because she is tied to the family. So as a family, as a whole, okay, she moves. Okay, how about this? This area is the opposite. Here, the wife has a private net gain, okay, but husband has actually net loss. So in this area, wife wants to move personally, but husband doesn't want to move. But in this case, husband will agree to move because he finds out that his loss is smaller than the wife's gain. So as a family, some of the gains is positive. And in this area, we have the opposite. This area, nobody wants to move anyway. But in this case, what happens is that husband wants to move, right? But wife doesn't want to move. And at the end, the husband will stay because his gain is not big, okay? Is smaller than the wife's loss. So they will decide to stay. So in this case, we call the husband tied stayer. So personally, he wants to move, but since he is tied to the family relationship, so he decides to stay. So we call him tied stayer. In this case, who's the tied stayer? Wife is the tied stayer. So we have this tied mover and tied stayer concept. So that's what it explains. There may be tied movers or tied stayers. Okay. Okay, so that's what, okay, the last one is this. The personal gain may go for a wrong direction. Okay, what does it mean? It means that if we look at only the model of individual decisions, it seems like every mover should be better off in the new place than in his or her old place, right? So if he's not better off in this new place, in the first place, he should move. So if he moved, it must mean that he's better off here than his older place. But in reality, that may not be the case. Some people will actually worse off personally in this case, in this new area than in the old area, right? For example, it's possible that he may have a job that pays less, or cannot find a job, or he probably misses his friends or relatives in his hometown. Right? But then we can ask, why in the first place did he move, right? If he really hates this place. But it is, if we look at the family situations, it can be answered. He may not like here, but if his wife has a gain that is far greater than his loss, then it is possible that they actually move together. Right? So that is the idea of family migration. Okay. So that can explain a few interesting things. For example, in the textbook, page 329, it talks about power couples. Okay. So what it means? What it means is something like, it's a very simple idea. Let's say if there is a couple, let's say the husband and wife. Husband is very well educated. Wife is not that well educated. So wife doesn't, have a good job prospect. Okay. Then in this case, okay, it is likely that wife, gain from moving or staying is probably very small. Let's say she doesn't have any job. Okay, only the husband works. So then what would likely happen is that the husband will pretty much decide where they're gonna live. Okay. Because if, let's say, husband can get a large income increase in a new place, then it's not that difficult for them to move. Okay? But if both are very well educated, and if both have jobs, right, then it is quite difficult for them to coordinate where to live. Okay? And what this box of power couples just means that couples that both and husband are very well educated. And what it means, and then, if that's the case, then they are likely to settle in places where they both can find jobs, right? So they are likely to live in large city or small city. They are likely to live in larger cities, not in smaller cities, right? Obviously, because larger cities offer a wider choice of job opportunities. So usually you will find these type of power couples living in larger metropolitan areas, not in smaller places. Okay? So those kind of, interesting facts can be explained using like family migration. Okay? So if they live in, the same area, if it's a smaller place, obviously that it's difficult to find jobs for both. Okay? So we have this tide mover and tide stayer concept from this diagram. Now, what we are going to talk about now is that we talk about the movement in general. Now, let's talk about more about the international migration. Okay. So this is just I think you have seen this diagram a few times before. So this shows the number of foreign residents in Korea. So there's international movements are very common nowadays. And with international movements, okay, There has been lots of talk about, for example, like a brain drain. You know, have you heard this term, brain drain? What does this mean? Brain drain. Smart people moving out of the country, right? So if that's the case, then we may say that there is a brain drain. Okay. So in this theory, we will talk about issues that is related with the brain drain. So in this theory, what we are going to look at is how this immigration flow is determined. Okay, let's look at this diagram first. Okay, what it shows here is that let's think of there are two countries. Okay, to make things simple, there are two countries, and one country we call it source country, and the other one is destination country. So movement happens from source to destination country, okay, as the name stands. So it is the case where, for example, this country is relatively poor, this country is relatively rich. Okay, so people find better job opportunities in this destination country. So lots of people wants to move from source to destination country. Okay, let's think of that flow, situation. So something like, for example, like it's Mexico, U.S., right? Those kind of situations. Okay. Okay, and then what interests the people here is that what kind of people from source country moving to destination country. Okay. So the people are not randomly selected from source to, destination country. Not everyone wants to actually move from source to destination. Okay. A lot of people want to stay, actually. So there is a selection. It's not a random thing. It's not like, oh, one day I just wake up and, oh, I have to go to the States. No, they don't do that, right? They just think about, what are the consequences of doing this. So they will make deliberate choices. So there must be some selection out of source country to destination country. So that interests us because from destination country's point of view, they want to find out what kind of people they are getting. Are they getting, let's say, smart people, or are they getting, not that smart people? Okay? If they are, let's say, smart people, then in the long run, it may have this immigration may help this destination country because they will have lots of very good, people of good abilities. But if they are getting, let's say, the bottom group in the source country, then from the destination country's view, it's not a good idea because it may be a burden to a destination country in the long run because, for example, like welfares and they have to give subsidies to these new immigrants who are not very well equipped to deal with this new situation. So that is quite important thing. From source country's point of view, it's also quite important. What kind of people are just moving out of this country? Is this a brain drain, right? Let's say if the smart people moving from this to here, right? The source country point of view, it's a brain drain. We call it brain drain. Or whether this bottom group of people are moving from this to another country. Probably the source country's point of view, it may be a happy thing. Okay, we are poor, and then this group of people are moving out. Probably there's not much to worry about. Okay, so that's a topic that we are going to talk about. And we need a name, so just a defined name. Okay, what is this? This is the skill distribution in the source country. Okay, so we have this group of people who have the skill levels. Okay, so this is higher skill level. This is lower skill level. Okay, so these are brains. These are not that brains. Okay, and if the immigrants are from this upper tail of the skill distribution, and we call it positively selected immigration flow. Okay, so it means that just that basically, when you think of 0 in between, this is a positive side. Okay, the right side is positive side in terms of numbers. So positive number, negative number. So this upper tail of the distribution of skills moving out of this country, then we call it positively selected. And the other side, we call it the negatively selected. Okay? So relatively high-skilled people are moving out. We call it positively selected immigration flow. Relatively low-skilled are moving out. We call it the negatively selected immigration flow. Okay? Get it? Now, what determines this positive or negative selection? Actually, it's not that difficult to figure out. Basically, why? Because people look at whether they, regardless of their skill level, they will look at their net benefit of moving from this country to the destination country. So if the positively if the high skill group finds that net benefit of moving is positive, and the low skill group finds that the net benefit of moving is negative, then the immigration flow will be positively selected. The other way, it's going to be negatively selected. So what it determines, basically you can think of this way. Okay, what it shows, this shows the earnings according to the skill level. Okay, so this black line shows the relationship between earnings and skill level in the source country. And this green line shows the relationship between the earnings and skill level in the destination country. Okay? So what does it show? Okay, so in one way of looking at it is the slope of the line shows, for example, the rate of return to skills. If the slope is flat, then rate of return to skill is low. If it's steep, rate of return to skill is high. Okay? Know what I mean? You know what I mean? Okay, rate of return. Or you can say that earnings distribution. If the earnings distribution is equal, the line gonna be relatively flat. Okay, whether you have a high skill or low skill, your earnings are not that different. So earnings distribution is flat. Earnings distribution is unequal, then it's likely to be steep. Okay? So you can think of it as like earnings distribution or rate of return to skill. But anyway, basically the same. In the countries where the rate of return to skill is low, then earnings distribution will be more equal. If the rate of return to skill is high, okay, then earnings distribution will be more unequal, because rate of return to skill is basically a relative thing, right? So how much the skill rewards me just means that what's the difference between high-skilled earnings and low-skilled earnings. Okay, basically, same thing. In this case, destination country has steeper line, and source country has flatter line. So you can say that source country has more equal income distribution, or rate of return to skill is low. Then who's going to move in the source country? High-skilled or low-skilled? What kind of people in the source country going to move? High-skilled or low-skilled? Must be high-skilled. It's a simple math. They look at the earnings difference, and then destination country pays more than source country. Okay, so these people will move and these people will stay. So in this case, you can see that if you look at the source country and destination country, if the source country has more equal income distribution, then it is likely that the immigration flow will be positively selected. Okay? And the other way around must be the opposite. Destination countries has more equal income distribution than the source country. Then who's more likely to move? The low-skilled group. So in this case, selected how? Positively, negatively? Negatively selected. So it's a very simple model of looking at it. So they just look at the differences. Okay. So in this case, what it shows is, oh wow, income distribution may be quite important factor in determining what kind of group of people are moving from one country to another. So that's the explanation that I just said. Okay, so what is interesting about this here is that, well, if there are not only one country, source country, there is another country, okay? So let's say A, B, okay? So there are two countries that feeds people into, let's say, country X. Okay? And let's say A has quite equal income distribution, and let's say this has unequal income distribution compared to equal income distribution in the country X. This one, so from country A, is positively selected or negatively selected? Immigration flow must be positively selected, plus, okay, positively selected. And this group, this country's immigration flow must be negatively selected. Okay? So in this country, if you look at the people from country A and country B, who's likely to be more skilled? Group, people from A or people from B? It's likely to be people from A. Okay? So that's the, the basic idea. In a way, it's an interesting idea. So we meet people from different countries, let's say, in country X. And you find that, let's say, the people from country A is relative, generally, high skilled. People from country B is generally low skilled. Okay? Then, you may wonder what is happening. Why these people are generally smart and these people are not. Okay? There must be some explanation. So that explanation can come from this model. Okay? So, these group of people are generally likely, everything else equal, from more equal, in country of more equal income distribution. Country of more unequal income distribution, negatively selected. Okay? So there is a discussion about actual experience of the U.S. in this textbook, section 8-6 from 337. So since we are not familiar with the U.S. history of immigrants, so we are not going to talk about it, okay, much. But the thing is that there is this interesting theory that can explain why these people are of different skills. Now there is a in page 341 there is one interesting observation. For example, income distribution in Mexico is very unequal. Okay, in the one of the most unequal income the country that has the most unequal income distribution in OECD, one of them is Mexico. Chile and Mexico, they have very unequal income distribution. And then what it says is that most Mexican immigrants are low skilled to the U.S. It's like Mexico. It's negatively selected. So if you're high skilled in Mexico, you are actually happy. Okay? But you are low skilled, very unhappy. So you want to move to the U.S. So most Mexican immigrants are very low skilled. Okay? That's what it says. And for example, the UK is generally more equal income distribution. So UK immigrants from UK to the US are generally positively selected, higher income group. Okay, get it? So that's the idea that is behind of this theory. So lots of these theories are coming from actually the US experience. So that's an interesting thing. So for example, lots of people from Europe are generally high skilled in the US point of view, and European countries are generally have more equal income distribution than in the US. So the high skilled Europeans have an incentive to move out of their own country to the US that pays them better because it's more unequal. But if you live in, let's say, South America that has very unequal income distribution, if you're low skilled, you have a strong incentive to get out of this place. So that kind of the idea. So there is a very interesting discussion about it. Okay, now what is this? Okay, this is this tries to explain, for example, what happens to immigration when, let's say, recession hits the U.S. Okay, let's say U.S. has this subprime mortgage crisis. Okay, so U.S. hits a recession. Then what happens? You can think of if if that crisis does not change actually the nature of income distribution, but it actually lowers the income level for every group of people. So what it means is the U.S. before the recession, the U.S. income distribution was like this. Now let's say it just drops down. Okay. No change in the slope. There is only the level change. So people just earn less, but every group of people. What happens to immigration flow? What happens? Okay, before the recession, was it positive selection or negative selection? Before the recession, is it positive selection or negative selection? Positive selection. After the recession, is it positive selection or negative selection? Positive or negative? It's still positive selection. Okay. What happened is that positive selection doesn't change. What changes only is the number of people who are moving. Okay. Fewer people are gonna move because now the U.S. offers lower income, so these people are now wants to stay. But if you're very high skilled, you can still get a better income even with the recession in the U.S. So these very high skilled people are going to move. Okay? So what it shows that it does not change the nature of the selection. It's positive, negative, doesn't change. Only the volume of immigration changes. Okay, in this case, source country has more unequal income distribution. Okay. So the U.S. before it was a negative or positive selection? Negative selection or positive selection? Negative selection. Now the incomes are lower, negative or positive? Still negative selection. But the numbers are quite small. Okay? So the numbers do change. This very interesting thing about this is that what it shows is that volume of immigration is very sensitive to income opportunities. Okay, if the U.S. is in the boom, lots of people want to go there. If it's a recession, far fewer people will, likely will want to be there. So there is a discussion about it actually somewhere in the textbook that that the income, the movement of people is very, very sensitive to the economic situation. There is somewhere in the textbook. I forgot where it is. For example, like for example, the number of illegal immigrants coming from Mexico to the U.S. It's very sensitive to U.S. business cycle. If it's a boom, lots of illegal immigrants wants to come. If it's a recession, a lot smaller number of people wants to move. Okay, it's because it's all economic decisions. Okay, I think. Anyway, so if you're interested in this immigration issue, our textbook is very good source. As I said, the author is probably the best known expert in this area among economists. So he writes very interesting facts and analysis in the textbook about Puerto Rico, and this is very interesting. I enjoyed the Puerto Rico thing, and then intergenerational mobility of immigrants. So it also talks about, even though we didn't discuss here, the author talks about the intergenerational mobility of immigrants in the United States. So it asks a question whether the second generation of immigrants are better off than their parents. Okay, so parents moved to this country and they stay there, and then they have now their children born in the United States. So it's asking whether these children are better off than their parents. Okay, then what kind of things can determine that whether the immigrants gets better off over the generations or not, and it talks about very interesting things about this. So, in our country, immigration is not a big issue right now, but over time, I think it's gonna be a quite important issue in this country as well. First, that we have now about 1 million foreigners, registered foreigners living here, so that is not a small number, right? So we have now like a Chinatown in many areas, right? And second is that actually there is a talk about immigration policy now, because the Korea's fertility rate is very, very low. Okay, so it's like 1.1, 1.2. So if we keep this low fertility level, then basically in the future we are looking at the shrinking population. And shrinking population, is a big headache from economic point of view. Obviously, if you think of, for example, like a national pension, it's going to be a huge headache. And second is like health insurance. If you have a bunch of old people who do not contribute any to their health insurance, but it's very costly. People spend most of their medical expense just before they die, actually. So, for example, you guys, you probably don't go to hospital, for the last 5 years, but if your parents like 60s, 70s, 80s, they go to hospital every 5 days. So they are very expensive. So obviously that you have a small number of young people and large number of old people. It is a huge economic problem. So, and then with this low fertility rate, if we don't do anything, it will happen. It's inevitable. If you have like one kid for every 2 people, obviously it's going to be a big problem. So actually there is talk about immigration policy. Because one way to solve this problem is that if you have lots of people wants to live in this country coming from foreign countries, why don't we, do something about it? Okay? So that is an issue. So I expect the immigration will be a very important policy issue within probably 10 years. Okay, it's not that far. Okay, so when we see, like for example, like running out of money in the national pension account, and then we will inevitably see some discussion about immigration. So it's gonna be a very important topic. So you pay attention to it, right? Now let's look at the problems. One of the let's do a little bit of simple problem to check whether we know what we are doing. 8-3. Look at the page 362. Question 8-3. We are talking about Mickey and Minnie, two mice. Mickey and Minnie live in Orlando. You know, it's a good place. It's an interesting place. It has a castle. Oh, if you have money in the future, visit Orlando. Nice place. Mickey and Minnie live in Orlando. Mickey's net present value of lifetime earnings in Orlando is $125,000. So we have Mickey, Minnie. Are they married? No, seriously. No, right? They have never been married. You don't watch Mickey and Minnie. I think it is you watch Pororo. Your nephews, niece, and watch Pororo. They don't watch Mickey and Minnie. Anyway, and Atlanta. Why they want to go to Atlanta? Okay. Mickey earns $125 in Orlando. Okay, Minnie is $500,000. Minnie is earning $500,000 in Orlando. Minnie earns a lot more than Mickey because Minnie is more popular. $500,000. In Atlanta, Mickey's net present value of lifetime earnings will be $155,000. Minnie would be okay. Okay, so, and then what it says that the cost of moving from Orlando to Atlanta is $25,000 per person. Per person, not per mouse. Right? Must be per mouse. Expensive mouse to move. Okay. And what it says that if Mickey and Minnie are married, so they jointly decide whether to move or not, will they move or not? Think about it. Will they move? Why not? What is the net benefit of moving from Orlando to Atlanta? What happens? For Mickey, what is the net benefit of moving from Orlando to Atlanta? Huh? What is it? 30,000. But that's not actually net benefit. 30,000, but there's a cost of moving, right? So how much? 5,000. How about the Minnie? What is the net benefit of moving from Orlando to Atlanta? Minus 15,000, right? Okay. So if they decide jointly, will they move or not? They are not going to move, right? Because sum them up. Negative. Sum of net benefit is negative. Who's the tied stayer then? Mickey is the tied stayer. Okay. Mickey wants to revive his career in Atlanta, but Minnie is so popular in Orlando, so he decided to stay. Okay. Okay, get it? And that's the idea. So you look at the net benefit of each person, okay? And then if it's a joint decision, you look at the sum of the net benefits and see whether it's true, whether they are going to move or not. Okay? Let's look at 8-4. Suppose a worker's skill is captured by his efficiency units of labor. The distribution of efficiency units in the population is such that one has the one efficiency unit, worker 2 has 2 efficiency units, and so forth. So worker 1 has 1 efficiency unit, worker 2 has 2 efficiency unit, and worker 100 must have 100 units of efficiency. In deciding whether to United States or not, they look at the wage-skill relationship in their home country and the US. So, in the home country, wage-skill relationship is W0 is 700 plus US, let's say destination country. The textbook, it says US. So that is W1 670 plus S. Okay. Assume there are no migration costs. Is this negatively selected flow or positively selected flow? Positively or negatively? Must be? Which one has more unequal income distribution? US. US has higher return to skill, right? So you look at the slope. The slope is steeper. So this is positive selection or negative selection? Must be positive selection if you get this way, right? So positive selection. And how many people are going to move? $60, I think. Right? Isn't it? No. 40? 40 people. They're going to move if, right? So if S is greater than 60, they're going to move. Let's say equal or greater. So make it greater to make it. So how many people are going to move? Out of 100, must to be 40 people, right? If your skill level is 61, you're going to move. 62, you're going to move up to 100. So 40 people must move, okay? So it's positive selection and skill level must be greater than 60. Suppose it costs $10 to migrate to the United States. Then how do you look at it? If they move to the US, it costs $10. Then how do you change it? How do you change this one? Ask the same question, but the same thing. The only thing is that if you move to the US, you have to pay $10. Then how would you change this? Basically, what you can do is that W1 is starting from 660, okay, not 670, just minus 10. Okay, so you solve the same thing. Okay, so this must be 80, right? 80. Okay. So, and problem 8-7, you try yourself. Okay, now let's look at the job mobility. So far we have looked at the geographic mobility. That's one labor mobility that we are interested in, but another one is the job mobility. Okay. Well, it is likely that job mobility and geographic mobility are related. Lots of people, when they change where they live, they generally change their jobs, right? So that's usually the case, unless you are basically sent to the branch of your company. Let's say you are, asked to work in, let's say, Busan branch of, let's say, of your bank. Then your job basically probably doesn't change. What you do will change anyway, but your employer doesn't change. But in most cases, when people move, then in more often than not, they will change their job as well. Okay? So job mobility and geographic mobility is related, but it's not one-to-one. Okay, so let's look at some facts of job turnovers. Okay, there are very interesting facts about job turnovers. So job turnover is the changing jobs, basically. So job turnover can happen in two ways. One is quit, the other one is layoff. Quit is that this person just quit this job voluntarily and finds another job. Okay, so there is a turnover. Layoff is the other way around. This person is just got laid off. This person doesn't want to change the job, but for whatever reason, this person got laid off and has to find a new job. So that's another case of job turnover. Okay? So changing jobs the same, but the reasons are very different. So you can say this is voluntary turnover and this is involuntary turnover. Okay? And the facts, first facts that is very well known is that job turnover declines. Both quits and layoffs decline with seniority and age. What the seniority means? Seniority just simply means how long you have held this job. That's seniority, okay, or tenure. People use job tenure and seniority pretty much the same way. The economists, job tenure or seniority, basically means how long you have held this job. Okay? For example, you have heard this term, the seniority-based wage. Basically, what it means is that how much you are paid is determined by how long you have had this job. That is, we call it the seniority-based wage. Okay? Or we may say that this person has a long tenure in his job. It just means that he has had this job for a long, long time. Okay? So seniority means how long. So what does it mean? It means two things, right? So first thing is that quits and layoffs decline if this person, so the person who has had this job for only for a short period of time are more likely to quit or to be laid off than the individual who have had this job for a long, long time. Okay? Got it? Age is similar but different. Age is just simply age. Okay? So young people are more likely to quit or to be laid off than older people, even with the same seniority. So it is possible that you just new to a job and there is a person who's 40 years old but got this job just now, and your seniority may be the same, but one person is 20 and the other person is 40, and the 20-year-old person is more likely to quit or more likely to be laid off than 40-year-old person. Okay? Okay, this fact is so well known, so that it does not require any statistics. But if we look at the statistics, something like this. This is kind of old statistics because there are not many studies that look at job turnovers. Studying job turnover is such a pain because you have to follow the data. Okay. It's not an easy thing to do. Okay, what it means is that this is young workers and older workers. Okay, so look at the different age group, young worker, older workers. And what is the probability of job turnover? This probability of job turnover is like you look at the number 0.8, 0.76, and this 0.45, so the numbers are much lower in this case. And this shows the years on the job. That's a seniority. Then as you can see that it declines, okay, in the same group of people. Okay? That's one fact. Second, the rate of job loss is highest among the least educated workers. So if this is, if the person loses a job, gets laid off, okay, and it has difference, it is different across education group. And if you are not that well educated, you have higher probability of losing your job. Okay. So having good education is a very good protection against job loss. That's very well-known fact. It has been shown clearly, for example, in the Great Recession of the United States. Okay, it has been very well known. So this is a bit old, but the rate of change from employment to unemployment, or not in the labor force. So basically, employed, now unemployed, or not working. And if you look at it by education group, then lower education group has higher probability of experiencing it. So education is important, okay, for job turnovers. Okay. Workers in low-paying jobs are likely to quit job more. Yeah, obviously. Okay? If you are not paid well, you are more likely to quit than in the case where you are paid well. It's because you have better opportunities. Okay? Women have higher quit rates than men, okay, for whatever reason. It's very well known. I have a statistics, but I'm not going to bore you with all those statistics. You look at the graphs, in the lecture notes. Okay, quit rates tend to decline as firm size increases. What it means is that the employees working in larger companies are less likely to quit than those who work in smaller companies. If you look at Korean statistics, that it actually is clearly shown. Okay. Why? There's two reasons we can think of. One is that larger firms offer more possibilities for transfers and promotions. What it means is, if you're in a larger corporation, the larger corporation have lots of different actually jobs available within a company, right? So let's say you are assigned to one department, you don't like the job, you can say that I want to transfer. So you don't have to change your employer, you just move to another part. So that is, if you're a smaller company, obviously that is not easy to do that. So people tend to less likely to quit in larger companies. And larger firms generally offer higher salaries. Okay? Higher salaries usually means less quit because it's a good opportunity. And workers are more likely to quit when the jobs are more plentiful relative to job seekers. So there are lots of jobs available out there. Then it's a good time to quit and find a new job. It's all economic logic. Basically it's opportunity cost. Okay, if you quit this, then you have to find a new job. If it's easier to find a new job, more likely to quit. When the jobs are scarce, then less likely to quit, obviously. Okay. Workers in metropolitan areas are more likely to quit jobs than workers in non-metropolitan areas. Why? So if you're in a larger city, you are more likely to quit than the people living in a smaller area, smaller city. Why? More opportunities, right? You don't have to move to another place to find a job. Larger metropolitan areas, you can find jobs somewhere else without changing where you live. So it's less costly. And there is a large variation in job turnover rates across countries. Okay, it's not. So some countries have lower turnover rates, some countries have higher turnover rates. So these are the bunch of statistics. So employer size, okay, the smaller ones are much more likely to separate from jobs than the larger companies. Job turnover of young workers, like these are the number of jobs held per year, and this is the number of jobs held during a 4 year. So if the larger number means that more turnover. Okay? So as you can see, Korea is like this, and Germany is lower number, and Japan is very low, something like that. But it may have changed. It's not. It does. We don't have much good data for recent years. Okay, so here, okay, I think we should. I think we should stop here today, and then continue our discussion on Thursday. And then on Thursday, we also move to a new topic, start a new topic of labor market discrimination.